She was sold into slavery as a child, but now she wears the crown of a queen. Just when she thought she had escaped the horrors of her past, the man who once chained her returns, with secrets that could destroy her reign. Will Queen Tari survive the shadows, or will her past tear down everything she built? The scorching sun bore down upon the dust-covered plains of the Obasa kingdom, where screams mingled with the crack of whips and the clinking of chains. It was in this harsh world that Tari's story began, a child of misfortune, torn from her mother's arms at the age of 8, sold like livestock at a coastal slave market. Her name was the only thing she had left, Tari. They branded her back, shackled her wrists, and carted her off to the heart of the kingdom, where she was sold to the household of Governor Uduak, a cruel man with a taste for domination. Her days were filled with back-breaking labor, her nights with silent tears and whispered prayers to gods she wasn't sure even heard her. Yet, something in Tari would not break. She watched, she learned. Every command barked at her was stored away, every rule, every nuance of the palace's political games, all etched in her memory. While other slaves resigned themselves to misery, Tari's spirit burned with defiance, though she hid it behind lowered eyes and bowed heads. By the time she turned 17, Tari had become a favored servant in Governor Uduak's household. Her beauty was undeniable, high cheekbones, dark almond eyes that shimmered like obsidian, and skin like burnished copper. But it wasn't just her beauty. It was her poise, her intelligence, the way she spoke when aloud, always measured and wise. One evening, fate intervened. A royal banquet was held in Governor Uduak's estate to honor the arrival of King Adewale, a just and powerful ruler known for expanding the Obasa kingdom through diplomacy and strength. Tari, in her servant's attire, moved through the banquet hall like a wraith, silent, invisible. But she caught his eye. It wasn't just her beauty. It was her bearing, her command of space, even in submission. The king watched her from across the room, intrigued. And later that night, when the wine had flowed and the musicians played softly, he called for her. "I want to know your story," King Adewale said, dismissing the guards. "No one wants a slave's story, my king," she replied, her eyes cast downward. "I do." "So," she told him. Something in her story stirred him. Perhaps it was the strength in her voice despite the sorrow. Or perhaps it was how she refused to be a victim, even in the recounting of her pain. He did not touch her that night. Instead, he offered her freedom. In the weeks that followed, King Adewale returned to Uduak's estate under the guise of further diplomacy. Each visit he spent more time with Tari. He arranged her freedom quietly, provided her with education, clothing, and lodging within the royal city of Endemu. And soon he took her as his companion. The court was scandalized. Nobles whispered behind their fans, a slave girl, as consort. But King Adewale cared little for gossip. When he named Tari his queen a year later, many gasped, but none dared oppose him openly. Queen Tari. She was crowned in a ceremony unlike any other. Dressed in a robe of deep indigo and crowned with an obsidian circlet, she stood beside her king, regal and composed. In the space of a few years, she had gone from slave to sovereign, but power invited envy. Many in the court still resented her, especially Lady Ifunanya, a noble woman who had long believed she would marry the king. Rumors began to swirl. Tari was a sorceress, a seductress, a woman with cursed blood. She smiled through it all, her throne secure beside the man who had believed in her. Then came the Festival of Ancestors. It was a time when the kingdom honored the dead and welcomed the living. Tribes gathered, warriors danced, and foreign emissaries arrived with gifts. Among them was a man with a scar running from his temple to his chin. a man who once held the chain that led young Tari through the market. His name was Bako. He had been a slave trader once. Now he posed as a wealthy merchant from the Eastern Territories. He saw her immediately, standing tall beside the king. He smirked. "I know that face," he whispered to his companion. "I sold that girl. I branded her myself." The next day, whispers began. Some claimed the queen was not who she said she was. Others said she had been seen performing secret rituals in the woods. A nobleman claimed to have seen the mark of a slave on her back. The king dismissed the rumors. But doubt had taken root, and Tari knew. Her past had come knocking. She met Bako under the cover of night in the palace gardens. His voice was like acid. "You wear the crown well, girl, but a crown can be taken, especially when it rests on a neck I once put in chains." Tari didn't flinch. "What do you want?" "Gold, land, a title, and your silence, or I tell your king everything. My husband knows I was a slave. Does he know how you were sold? That your mother died trying to stop me? That you once begged me to end your life?" Tari's breath hitched. Bako leaned closer. "You can't bury your past, my queen. It always claws its way back." The next day, a scroll arrived at the palace, an anonymous letter bearing accusations. Queen Tari was an impostor, an escaped slave, and a sorceress who had ensnared the king. King Adewale summoned her privately. "Is there truth to this?" he asked, holding the scroll. "Yes," she said simply. "But it changes nothing." He stared at her, torn between rage and heartbreak. "Why didn't you tell me everything?" "Because I wanted to leave that life behind. But I see now. The past doesn't forget." The king left without a word. That night, Queen Tari did not sleep. She stood before the mirror, not as a queen, but as a girl who had crawled through fire to wear her crown. And as dawn broke, she knew what she had to do. Vako had to be silenced, permanently. But as she plotted her next move, she didn't know that Vako had allies in the court. And one of them had plans to see her fall, crown and all. The palace walls, once a symbol of sanctuary, now felt like cages made of whispers. Queen Tari moved through the marble corridors like a shadow, head held high but soul in turmoil. The accusations had spread like wildfire. Though King Adewale had not publicly condemned her, his silence had become a statement of its own. Still, she refused to cower. She had not survived the horrors of her past to crumble now. That morning, she called for General Adisa, the king's most trusted commander, and a man loyal to justice above all else. As he entered her private chambers, he bowed, but there was hesitation in his gaze. "You've heard the rumors," she said. "I have, my queen." "Then know this. They are not lies, but they are not the whole truth either. I was once a slave, but I am not the same girl who was led in chains. That girl died long ago." Adisa looked at her carefully. "What do you wish of me?" "Find out who Bako truly is. He hides behind gold and titles, but he is a slaver. He seeks to blackmail the crown and destroy everything we have built." The general nodded. "I will do what I must, for the good of Obasa." Bako, meanwhile, was enjoying the chaos. He had been hosted in a lavish guest house within the palace walls. His pockets were lined with coin, his hands with wine, and his words with poison. Nobles and merchants came to him with questions and left with suspicions. Lady Ifunanya was among his earliest visitors. "She was nothing," she whispered in his ear. "A slave, an outsider. She doesn't belong on our throne." "Then help me remove her," Bako said with a grin. "And when I'm done, there will be a vacancy beside the king." Their alliance was sealed over wine and venom. Days passed. The king remained distant. Tari knew she had to act quickly. With Adisa's help, she traced Bako's financial trails, his movement patterns, and discovered he was planning a coup. Letters were intercepted, letters that detailed his plan to use a gathering of nobles to force King Adewale to abdicate and name a new queen, Ifunanya. Tari brought this evidence to the king. At first, he sat in silence, his eyes locked on the pages. Then, slowly, he spoke. I am not angry that you were once a slave. I am angry that you believed it would change how I saw you. Tari, I loved you not because of your past, but despite it. And now I love you even more. Tari's eyes welled with tears. I was afraid. I didn't want my past to taint your rule. He reached out, cupping her cheek. It is not your past that taints the throne. It is those who plot in the shadows. That night, a grand feast was held. Nobles from every corner of Obasa filled the royal hall. Wine flowed, music danced, and Tari sat beside the king, radiant and unshaken. Then the king stood. I have heard the whispers, the rumors, the lies. A hush fell, but let me tell you the truth. My queen was once a slave. She was once branded and beaten, but she rose above it. She became the wisest, kindest, and strongest woman I have ever known, and anyone who dares call her unworthy shall answer to me. Cheers erupted. Some clapped with loyalty, others with fear, but none spoke against him. And then General Adisa appeared. With guards flanking him, he dragged Bako forward, bound in chains. This man is no merchant. He is a traitor and a slaver, guilty of treason. Gasps rippled through the hall. Lady Ifunanya tried to slip away, but she too was seized. The king turned to Bako. You branded her, you sold her, and yet she rose. But now your fate is sealed. Tari stepped forward. Her voice was calm. I will not kill you, Bako. Death is too swift. Instead, you will live out your days in the mines of Obasa. The chains you placed on others will now weigh on you. That is justice. Bako was dragged away. Ifunanya, stripped of title and wealth, was exiled. Weeks passed, and the air in the palace shifted. Where once there had been suspicion, now there was admiration. People saw Queen Tari not just as a royal, but as a symbol of strength and hope. She instituted reforms, freeing slaves across the kingdom. Schools were opened, trade flourished, and her name was sung in villages far and wide. And one morning, beneath the shade of a flowering iroko tree, she held her first child, a daughter, with King Adewale by her side. Her name? The king asked. Tari smiled. Amara, it means grace, for she is the grace that came after the storm. Years passed. Queen Tari's reign became one of legend. Under her and King Adewale's rule, the Obasa kingdom transformed from a fractured land of ambition and betrayal to a united realm of justice, culture, and prosperity. She established the House of Voices, a council of former slaves, merchants, farmers, and nobles alike, ensuring the poor and powerful had equal say in the governance of the realm. She reopened trade with distant lands, formed alliances that ended decades-long conflicts, and even wrote the Scroll of Restoration, a document that outlawed human bondage in all corners of Obasa. But Tari never forgot where she came from. Every year she returned to the coast, where she had once been sold. She erected a monument, the Flame of Freedom, where thousands gathered to honor those who had suffered in silence. It was there she told her story to young girls with wide eyes, to old men with tear-streaked cheeks. I was born in chains, she said, but I was never truly bound, not in spirit, not in soul. Her daughter Amara grew with her mother's fire and her father's wisdom, and on her 15th birthday, Tari gifted her the circlet of obsidian, the very one she had worn on the day she was crowned queen. Not because you are next to rule, she told her, but because you must remember, power is not given by blood, It is earned, and it must serve, not command. Amara bowed. I will not fail you. Tari smiled, tears in her eyes. You cannot fail me. You are already more than I ever dreamed. On her final day, many years later, Queen Tari sat in her garden, watching the sun rise over the city of Endemu. The bells tolled, the market buzzed, and children laughed in the streets. She closed her eyes peacefully. The people mourned, but they also celebrated. For the girl who was once a slave had not only become queen, she had become a legend.